Hello, my name is John Midbow. I'm a customer service manager and am involved with marketing here at Scalability Experts. Welcome to our webinar on creating a competitive advantage through BI capabilities. This production is made possible by the hard work of many people. I'd like to take a minute to thank everybody involved. Specifically, I'd like to recognize and thank Andy Isley, who we will be hearing from today. Andy Isley is a senior architect and is our practice leader for business intelligence here at Scalability Experts. Andy has 15 years of experience with BI and SQL and is a subject matter expert with expertise in designing and implementing end-to-end BI solutions. We've muted our audience, but you will have the ability to ask questions at the end of the presentation by using the Q&A tool in your menu bar. If you're unable to get to your question today, you can always contact us at info@scalabilityexperts.com or at Andy's email address, which is available on this slide. We'll have a copy of this webinar available for download shortly. Without further ado, I'm going to turn control of this presentation over to our speaker, Andy Isley. I do apologize for a small lapse in continuity as I hand this presentation off to him.
Let's get into the real meat of what you're here today to listen to. Microsoft Business Intelligence. We get a lot of questions. How can it help us? What does it do for us? And the first thing that we want to tell people is that Microsoft BI is about connectivity. It's about giving you access to data that you didn't presently have through your existing reporting system. It's about going out and connecting to SQL Server, Oracle, SAP, Dynamics, and any custom homegrown line of business application that you have. And the way Microsoft's BI platform does this is it uses a variety of tools. And the basic backend is going to be SQL Server. And SQL Server brings to the table what I call the five major areas of BI. So we can start working with reporting services. It gives you your very rich, very formatted reports that the end users are used to today and that they just cannot live without. It gives them analysis services, which is a more ad hoc method of going in and analyzing data. And with 2012, analysis services turned into really two versions. So now we have the multidimensional version and we have the tabular version. And we're going to go into a little bit of detail on that a little later. It comes with integration services, which is, if you're not using it or haven't looked into it, it's a wonderful product for integrating data from one system into another system. We use it extensively for transforming data from, say, a legacy application into a data warehouse. It's very fast, very efficient, and very easy to use. It also comes with master data services. Now, while master data services isn't new to 2012, 2012 did make some major enhancements to the user interface. A lot of people complained that the previous version was just really slow to work with. And I can tell you that we just did an implementation of it, and the interface is much, much more robust, and much quicker to work with. Then we have data quality services, and this is a new offering within 2012. And we're very excited about this. One of the problems that we have with BI applications is being able to go in there and cleanse that data. While we could do that with integration services and we could do it with master data services, the problem is there was no central repository to maintain the business rules for that data cleansing. And that's where data quality services comes in. I'm going to show a few slides later, go into a little more detail behind that of exactly how that fits in with master data services and integration services. Now, SQL Server is what actually houses all this. And it's great, but this is all the back-end systems mainly. Now, the end users need to be able to interface with this data and be able to collaborate all the data across the organization. And the way they do that is with Excel, PowerPivot applications, SharePoint, and SharePoint dashboards and scorecards. And they do this with Office and SharePoint 2010. And, that is Microsoft's major interface within all of the BI tools is the SharePoint and the Office products. And you're going to see more of that here just in a few minutes. So with 2012, and this is sort of a little bit of a technical slide in a way, but it's an overview of what Microsoft offers within 2012 SQL Server. And it's been confusing because Microsoft came out with a new version of SQL Server, or a new offering of it, called the Business Intelligence version. You know, everyone's used to having the standard and enterprise and several other flavors. But now we have one more that confuses people and says, okay, what does this really do for me? Well, Business Intelligence version is a scaled-down enterprise version, so to speak. It has all the functionality that standard version has and additional functionality. It comes with Powerview, comes with data quality services, master data services, but has been scaled down quite a bit in cost and total cost of ownership. Now, does it give you everything that enterprise currently has? The answer is no. Where does it start not living up to the enterprise version? Well, if you're using analysis services and you need a dedicated server for analysis services or for reporting services, then Business Intelligence is a perfect candidate for that, because under those two platforms, there's no restrictions for memory or as far as memory is concerned. But if you need to scale up beyond, say, 16 cores of processors, then you have to go up to an enterprise version. And the enterprise version, what's that going to give me other than additional cores? Well, it's going to give you some additional BI capabilities, such as a column store index. And if you're not familiar with column store indexes, they're just phenomenal. They are absolutely great when it comes to reporting. Column store indexes can take a query that was running in 30 minutes and break it down into seconds. We've seen queries range anywhere from being only 5% faster to hundreds of times faster by just creating this column store index. Now, there's other things that Enterprise gives you. It gives you star schema optimizations. It gives you some DB snapshots. It gives you some parallel partition processing. So there is some advantages of moving up to the enterprise. However, when you look at the database size, and if you don't need the extra cores, then the cost savings can actually be beneficial for you to use the Business Intelligence version. They both can handle about the same amount of database volume, tens of terabytes. But even they come to a point where at one point in time, unless you've structured your architecture right, they're going to start filling the slowness of larger data sets once you get up into 20, 30, 40 terabytes of data. And the answer to that has come up with Microsoft has developed a fast track infrastructure. It's a reference architecture. And the biggest difference between fast track and enterprise is the fact that, well, it's a hardware solution. Now all of a sudden, not only do you get software, but you also get hardware to go along with it. And these solutions can scale anywhere between 4 terabytes and up to 80 terabytes. And it does come with an enterprise license. Now, of course, the next phase up in a data warehouse solution is to go to the big boy, is to go to the true parallel data warehouse. And if you look on this slide, it does say that it's SQL Server 2008 R2. That is the current version of parallel data warehouses out there today. We've worked on this. We've done several implementations. And guys, I can tell you, these things are fast. It is the only solution that we have today with SQL Server that is not a scale-up, but is a scale-out solution. And this solution, this slide's a little bit old. I just caught a mistake on it. It says that it's 10 to hundreds of terabytes, and that's not actually correct. Today, that goes from tens to 500 terabytes, and every month, that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now I also want to just debunk a rumor or something that people have heard. Well, you only need parallel databases if you've only got 500 terabytes of data, and that's incorrect. You need a parallel database, parallel PDW, when your query capacity exceeds what your hardware capacity can take. And we have actually seen solutions out there where the end user queries are consuming so much data, even off of 5 terabytes of data, that the user or the company needed to move to a PDW. And that was the only way they could actually sustain or get that much volume of queries through their system. Now, granted, we're talking about thousands of queries per second being run against the data warehouse. So now let's move into what you really came for and what the presentation's title really means. 2012 is about rapid data exploration, and that's what Microsoft BI is all about. It's about the visualizations. It's about self-service analysis, having familiar tools the users already depend on, having powerful data mashups that the users can actually do themselves without having to have IT get involved, or having to have a developer spend weeks of time developing a report or an analytical tool. It's about in-memory performance. It's also about the stunning interactive data visualizations. It's about having these rich metadata interactive charts and graphs that it doesn't take a developer to build, that an end user can actually build. And we're going to see this in a little bit. I'll do a demo of Powerview, and I think you'll be very impressed with this. It's about sharing and collaborating this data throughout your organization. And Microsoft has done a very good job with this, especially because all the BI tools are integrated with their SharePoint environment. So in 2012, what was the biggest change? Well, from an analysis services side, it was the BI Semantic Model. They've rebranded this and came up with a model that actually is going to support an organization. In the past, the problem with the models was IT had to build them, or if it was PowerPivot, an end user would build them, and then IT sort of sat on the backside and monitored it, but could never really edit it unless they wanted to edit it in Excel. So there was really 4 goals that Microsoft came up with when they started looking at increasing and enhancing analysis services and building this semantic model. 1, they wanted to build on the already existing analysis services platform, but they wanted to spread this out to a much broader audience with familiar development tools. They wanted to provide development tools that not only could an end user start the development of the semantic model, but then IT could pick up that and maintain that model going forward with professional tools, not having to use Excel to go in and edit a semantic model. They wanted to be able to bring together the best of both the relational and the multi-dimensional models all into one platform, and they've successfully done that. And then lastly, they wanted to be able to bring in and say, we can have a semantic model that's on a personal level. They can share this within their team, or from a BI, from a corporate perspective, they can bring the solution back out of either the personal or the team model and offer it up as a company-wide corporate BI solution. So what is this BI semantic model? Well, it's a combination of many things. It's a data access layer that allows you to go in and access databases, line of business applications, files, data feeds, cloud storage, pretty much any type of data that's currently out there that you're using today, you can use within the BI semantic model. It's about putting the data in, either whether it's in a ROLAP, a MOLAP, a VertiPack, or a direct query mechanism, to be able to access this data. And it's also about being able to have the business query the data either via MDX or DAX or SQL. And then all of a sudden you've got this data model where it can be multidimensional or tabular or relational for that matter. And it's all served up over either your own homegrown applications, you can use reporting services or Powerview, you can use Excel, PowerPivot, or even SharePoint Insights to actually gain access to the data. So the BI semantic model is an all-encompassing model that allows many, many applications to connect to it. So let's go to the next slide and let's look at exactly how a semantic model might come about within an organization. Okay? The organization's running SharePoint. You've got end users out there working with PowerPivot. You've got people working with Excel, third-party applications. So what happens is that end user goes out there and they create a PowerPivot Excel workbook. And they publish this Excel workbook out into the SharePoint environment. And this is great because now what happens is that they're going to be sharing this with their entire team. And the team can go out using Internet Explorer, Powerview, and connect to the Excel services, reporting services, and actually start accessing this data. The other nice part is that they can take this semantic model and publish the results out even into Excel or into third-party applications. Now, I think the most impressive thing of this is that even with this starting in an Excel Power Pivot table, and the development started in Excel, this model, the semantic model, can then be pulled out and published to an analysis services server and be offered up as a corporate BI solution. So this is how we've started. We started over here in Personal BI. We've published it out to the team to be able to see it, be able to use it, collaborate, share it. And then the corporate office has been able to pull this back in and offer it up and start managing it as if it's a corporate IT organized project. So now, the last slide, I introduced you to something called Powerview. And some of you may be having some questions right now is exactly what is Powerview? Well, Powerview is a SharePoint powered, not SharePoint, a Silverlight powered development environment that allows quick data changes and data layout changes with just a few clicks. It's 100% interactive. It's all web-based. And it allows the end users to manage and discover and share the reports very quickly through SharePoint. Now, the question that a lot of people will have is, Powerview, okay, who's going to be using this? And, you know, in the past, I've been out to customer sites and say, hey, I'm really interested in reporting services and giving this to our end users. And to be quite honest, reporting services isn't quite ready for the end users, or the end users aren't quite ready for reporting services to start developing their own reports. But Powerview is available, and Powerview is ready for this, and the end users are ready for this. It's in a familiar environment. It's highly interactive. It gives rich presentations, and yes, end users can do this without any training. It's very, very simple. Pick it up and start using it. It also allows power users to go through. They can reuse what's already been done, has flexible layouts, and it gives them very productive authoring capabilities. And of course, the IT will like it because it's easy to use and it gives them a rich design capabilities inside of it. So the answer to this question of who's going to be using it is basically everyone within your organization. So let's go over, I'm going to switch over to a demo real quick, show you exactly what Powerview is all about. Okay, let this load up for a minute. I've logged into my server. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at some models that have been published out by some end users, whether they've been published or whether these models have been published by an end user or whether they're corporately maintained and managed models, doesn't really matter. From an end user, I can't really tell one way or the other. What I'm presented with is an actual model, an option to actually open this up and work with it within Excel, or I'm able to go in and work with it within with a Powerview. So today we're going to go in and work with it within Powerview. I click on the Powerview icon. It then launches the Silverlight application, pulls the metadata from that model, and presents it to me in a familiar format. Now, if this looks a lot like your Office tools, it's very similar. It has a ribbon up top. It's got my metadata over here on the right-hand side where I can see. It's got, if I click on the cars here, it gives me my attributes of this particular dimension. And I have cells. So my fact data, I have different cells fact data. Now, if you're a developer and you're looking at this, you say, okay, where's my tools for me to drag and drop and say, okay, I want to add a title or I want to add a chart. Well, there isn't anything like that. So we're going to go in here. We're just going to click on this, and we're going to say car sales over time. And I want to be able to take a look at what my cars are. We're going to do some analysis of a dealership that some dealership data that we have. So I'm going to click on cars in my metadata, and it's going to instantly populate my report over here with some car data, my different dimensional car information. All right, so from here I can actually do some resizing if I want, and that's as simple as it is. I can go in and pull this information very, very fast. Now, if I wanted to, I have the fields that are available to me within this table, and I can go in here and drop a drop-down list and say remove this field. I can move it around. I can change the field's order. I can do sorting. But what I really want to do is this is taking up a lot of real estate in my screen. So I'm going to go and change this to a card layout. So within one click, I've changed the layout of my report. I'm going to shrink this down so I get some more real estate over here. And now I'm ready to generate my next grid. And in order to generate the next grid, I'm interested in seeing, well, based on my different types of cars, and I want to see what my cumulative sales are for that particular car. And I don't want a table format. I want to actually graph this out in columns. So I changed that. I'm going to resize this very quickly. Here we go. And now I have a chart. Now, remember earlier I said it's very interactive. So if I click on my hybrid model here, these two sections or two areas of the report are interlinked with one another. Click on SUVs, and I only get SUVs. Click on SUVs again, and I get all my car types over there in my table. Now, I didn't have to do any coding. I didn't have to understand how it worked. It just works. Now, if I want to do a different type of chart, I click in an open area. I can come up here and say, I want to see my sales amount. And let's see, I want to do a trend chart. So I'm going to do it by quarters. I'm going to change this to a line chart. And now all of a sudden, I have a line chart that actually shows me what's going on over time. And I can see that my sales have increased, dropped a little bit, and increased again. And again, if I click on the hybrids up here, it changes so that I can see what my trend is. And interestingly enough, I get a big jump here, I get a plateau, and I get a very high increased rate of sales near the end of my quarter 3 to quarter 1 of 2011. And if I click on SUVs, I get a little different picture. This picture actually shows a very much of a decline in sales. I get a spike of sales, and I've been declining. Now, as an analyst, I might come in here and say, well, this is great, but maybe I want to do some more analysis of this particular chart down here in the lower right-hand corner. And maybe I want to take a look at it from a perspective of how did gas prices affect the sales of my cars, my different types. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to Home, and I'm going to say, I need a new view. Creates me a new view. And then I'm going to come back to the first view, and I'm going to grab a hold of this bottom chart down here, and I'm going to copy it. Gives me a warning that Silverlight's going to interact with my desktop. That's okay. And now I'm going to come and I'm going to paste this in. So now I have a nice little chart I used from the very first screen, and I'm going to expand this a little bit, shrink it down. And I'm going to change my sales amount to average gas price. Okay? So now that I got my average gas price, what might be interesting is to be able to take how did it affect my different types of cars. So I'm going to come over here back to my first screen. I'm going to copy that bar chart that I have. come back. I'm going to paste it in over here. And I'm going to do something a little different with it. This time I'm going to actually look at it from a scatter perspective. A scatter chart is quite interesting, and it gives me a lot more capabilities of what I can actually do with my data. So here's one more example of a very rich tool that I can use. So right now I don't have anything really on my y-axis, so I'm going to make a couple of changes here. And what I want to do is I want to see what my margin is, and I'm going to bring my margin down here to my y-axis. And that all of a sudden changes my scatter chart. So I can see by hovering over top each dot, I can see SUVs have a higher margin than, say, my hybrids. Now, that's great, but what I really also want to know is it'd be nice to put another measure on here. It'd be nice to know, well, what's my year-over-year sales growth? So I'm going to grab my year-over-year sales growth, and I'm going to drop it down here on what's called a size. And as soon as I do that, it resizes that little bubble for each one of these and gives me, by size, an indicator of what my year-over-year growth has been. So now I can see that hybrids have a 64% year-over-year growth, whereas my SUVs only have a 14% year-over-year growth. Now, this is great, but it doesn't give me an analysis yet of, well, that's only for the current year. It doesn't give me how did that actually transpire over time. And if you look at this, I'm kind of out of axis. But what I can do is I have something called a play axis. And I can drag my quarters down here to a play axis. And now I actually get sort of a Windows Media kind of view where if I click on this little blue arrow down here in the corner, it's going to play through time how my sales have done. And if you notice, I had a big dip down here in gas prices somewhere around the first quarter of 2009. And if I back my bar up here, you'll see that in 2009, as gas prices started going down, I started selling more and more SUVs. But then as my gas prices started coming back up again, my total volume of SUVs, year-over-year growth, my dot got smaller. So while this analysis is pretty rudimentary for most of us, if you were to turn this loose on your real data, you'd be very surprised what you could actually come out of this. And we were able to do this in a very quick manner. A couple of clicks, and we've gotten through this already. All right. So now I'm going to go back to my presentation. Resume my slideshow. There we go. Let me back up a little bit. So now, that's Powerview. Okay, and I hope everyone has, if you've not seen this before, and this is your first time, I hope you really liked it. If you've seen it before, maybe you've learned something new. But a lot of you, if you've not dealt with it or you've been working with Microsoft BI, you're probably asking the question, well, is Powerview replacing PowerPivot? And the answer to that is no, it's not. PowerPivot is still available, it's still out there. Pivot tables within Excel are still available. I'm not going into great detail here because this has been around, and PowerPivot is part of SQL Server, but pivot tables and what Excel can do is part of the Office products. So look for some additional marketing material coming out. We're going to have another webinar very, very soon. Microsoft just released the preview for Office 2013. There are some exciting new features that we're going to be able to do within pivot tables that we couldn't do before, and we're going to have a whole session just on PowerPivot, and we'll have another whole session just on what you can do with Excel and BI analytics. So moving on to the next piece, consistent data within your organization. 2012 really grasped this and took hold of it and said, in order to have a great BI application, you really have to have consistent data. And in a minute, I'll tell you what I mean by consistent data. But right now, you need data quality services to help you cleanse that data. You're going to need master data services to help you maintain and manage the data that you currently have. And then you need integration services to help integrate, cleanse this data, and give you consistent data across the board. So in 2012, you have 3 tools. They all work together, and they all give you consistent data in your organization. So what are some of the data quality problems you'd have in your organization? They vary. They're everything from not having consistent data that's consistent, so that in one system you have codes, another system you have numerical values, but they represent the same thing. You need to be able to combine those to say, okay, well, male is male, female is female across the board. Apple is an apple, and orange is an orange. You need to be able to have complete data. If you're going to be doing demographic data and only 30%, or you're missing 30% of your data for zip codes, it's going to be really hard to do demographic analysis based off of a zip code. You need accurate data, okay? So if in your system, in your legacy system, you have data that says, hey, we've got a company that hasn't done business for 5 years, and that one should be marked as inactive, but currently is marked as active in your database, your data isn't accurate. So that's one of the other items that data quality service can help you with. You need to be able to look at data and say, well, is this data within an acceptable range? You know, we've all heard the example of, a custodial engineer making $1 million a year in a database somewhere. So we need to be able to take a look and say, okay, if this is the valid range, is this correct? And be able to flag that data so that we can cleanse it and make it correct. We have to be able to look at unique data. Every system I've ever worked with out there has duplicates in it, and it's one of the biggest underlying problems. You know, you can have something out there that has a name that appears twice, the same person, the same company, and we need to be able to correct that information. Data quality services can do that as well. So, what are we talking about? I'm going to give you an example here. As you can see in this example, we have Main Street, where street is spelled wrong. We have zip code that is actually missing for Bob. We have Burlington, which is misspelled for John. We have the state of North Carolina, which is actually in either spelled out long version or abbreviated version. And we have date of births that are in multiple different formats. Running the data through data quality services will give you what's down there in the aftershock, where street is actually pulled into the abbreviated street, or actually corrected in the name. The zip code is actually filled in because you had enough information from the address, from the city, the state, and the street that was able to give you that zip code information. Changing the states into one abbreviated character, and changing the date of birth so that it's exactly the same across the entire database. This is what we're talking about when it comes to data quality services. So, how do we set up data quality services? Well, the nice thing about data quality services is that it becomes a knowledge base. And inside the knowledge base, you're going to create a knowledge domain based on the information that you currently have about your data. And probably the best feature is that you can go out there and purchase knowledge bases from other corporate companies. Even out on the Windows Marketplace, there's in Azure, you can go out and purchase data domains for addresses, company information, so on and so forth. Then you pull those into your knowledge domain and you publish them out. Once they're published, they're available for data quality services to start using and start running through the cleansing process, pointing to the data in the knowledge base, extracting what's been cleansed, and then making changes for you. And there's a couple of ways that this can actually occur. It can automatically make the change for you based on a percentage of correctness, or it can flag the data and tell you that it's 80%, 60%, 99% sure that this data should be changed. And you control that as an end user. The other thing is that you need to be able to match duplicates. So you be able to take data quality services, go in, find the duplicates, find similar values, and either export the changes or flag these changes to be done by an end user at a later date. And now the best part about it is that once I have that knowledge base and I have set up those two items, I can then start incorporating this into my master data services as business rules, or within data quality, or within SSIS with a DQS cleansing task. Presently, I'd like to say that we could do dedupes with DQS within SSIS, but we can't. Right now, we're only presented with a data quality cleansing tool. But even still, with the data quality DQS cleansing task, we can tell whether it's a new, incorrect, invalid, or make suggestions out of the SSIS package. And what I'm really excited about is the fact that because DQS sits in between and is independent of SSIS and Master Data Services, if at some point the business decides that maybe the range is incorrect, or maybe they need to create a new business rule, or maybe they need to tweak a business rule, all they have to do is go into DQS, make the rules change, republish that rule to the DQS server, and the next time that you run SSIS with a DQS cleansing task or Master Data Services with a business rule, it automatically picks up that new rule for you, and it automatically processes it. So it takes the information out of the IT's hand, where we've all been there before. User dials up IT and says, hey, this rule is incorrect, it's making changes to the data that it shouldn't. And now it gives the power back to the end user, and the end user says, well, this shouldn't have made this change, and they can go in and make the change without having to contact IT. So that's pretty much, that is the majority of what's been new within SQL 2012 as far as BI is concerned. And we've got a few minutes here. I'm going to run very quickly through some architecture and some of the problems we see out there today with data warehouses. So one of the biggest things that we see is people will set up, they'll connect their SQL servers to these big SANs, big S&P servers, and they keep adding servers and servers and servers to these SANs. And what's wrong, there's something wrong with this, okay? And the answer to that is that we've gotten an out-of-balance system. Okay, the SAN was originally set up and configured to be able to handle 2 gigs per second of data access. However, when the data warehouse gets put on there, we need 12 gigs per second to actually be able to access the data to support our queries. The queries are becoming slower and slower, and end users are starting to complain about it. So, the result of this is that a company has made significant investments in these SANs. They've made significant investments in these large S&P SQL servers, and they're not delivering performance. So the answer to this problem is to balance the system. It's to take a look at your query capability. It's to take a look at your server configuration and your storage needs and your query needs, and to avoid the pitfalls of that shared storage and give you dedicated storage to your SQL servers. It's about making sure your company doesn't over-invest in disk drives that are not optimized for the workload that you're trying to do, or overspend on servers thinking that it's server hardware. So Fast Track fills this gap by taking a look at data warehouses and data warehouses needs. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is for data warehouses only. It's not, Fast Track is not configured for an OLTP environment. But it does give you a dedicated SAN. It gives you a dedicated server for your data warehouse. It does not give you capabilities of putting integration services on that server, or analysis services, or web analytics, or reporting services, or SharePoint on that server. It is a dedicated box. And in being a dedicated box, we are able to give you multiple configurations. Now, this just happens to be an HP configuration of what you can expect to get from reference architecture. But Dell has configurations as well, and so does other server companies out there. So a Fast Track implementation can go from anywhere between 20 terabytes in size and can range up to 80 terabytes in size. What I'm looking at here is I have a system here which is 80 terabytes. Now, once I go past that 80 terabyte range, or once my workload becomes so extensive, I may need to go up to a parallel data warehouse. And a parallel data warehouse can be up to 500 terabytes. And as I said, we do have customers that are running databases that are 10, 15 terabytes on a parallel data warehouse just because they need the extra capacity for the queries. It has nothing to do with the storage, but it's just they're really, really working those machines really hard. So now, parallel data warehouse architecture. How does it differ than the regular SQL Server architecture? Well, the biggest difference is it's not just one server. And it's not one server to one dedicated disk network. It is basically, if you buy a full rack solution, and they sell these in full racks and half racks, then a full rack is 17 servers with 17 or with 11 disk subsystems in the back end. So if you really wanted to break it down into very simplistic measures, this one section here is a single fast track. And each one of these, which is called a compute node, is a fast track. So we have 10 fast tracks linked together, and we have one interface that the clients connect to it with. So we have an active passive cluster of control nodes that issues the queries back to my 10 fast tracks, and then it generates my queries. It gives me a data center monitoring capabilities. This gives me the ability where Microsoft comes in. The nice part is PDW means Microsoft is responsible for upgrading your hardware and your software, or not your hardware. They're responsible for upgrading your software, not you. So when a new version comes out, Microsoft helps you upgrade. It also gives you an ETL interface, and it gives you a dedicated backup server that helps back up all these nodes at one time. So now, how does this actually work from an end user queries perspective? All right, query comes in from the end user. That query goes in the control node. The control node passes that query off to those compute nodes, and every one of those compute nodes start working at the same time. They then turn around and pass the query back. Now, I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to show you one last slide here and show you two last slides. Big differentiator with Microsoft is that you can have multiple people accessing PDW at the same time. Here I've got 8 people querying the control nodes. Those control nodes get the data out there, and they start processing it. Now, a big differentiator for Microsoft is the fact that someone's going to ask me, what happens when I need to back the system up while I have people querying? What happens if I need to load data while people are querying the system? It's not a problem. Okay? There are systems out there that will not let you do 2 things at one time. PDW is not that way. I can bring in data, start loading my data across all of my compute nodes while the queries are occurring from the end users. And you will see only about a 1% degradation in performance. That's incredible. So now, the data and the way it works is that the data is laid out quite differently. It's either replicated or distributed. So I'm going to skip that slide real quick. For fact data, it is spread across every single one of those nodes. But for dimensional data, the dimensional data is actually copied to each one of those nodes, so that each node doesn't have to leave its data or doesn't have to leave its system to go get data from another one of those back-end control nodes or compute nodes. Now, what does this mean for you? Really, really fast queries. Now this, what I'm showing you here, and this is my last slide, is the query times of a recent implementation that we did, where we took, in the blue bar there, is their query times based off of their existing data warehouse, their existing SMP data warehouse. That's not 1 minute and 38 seconds, by the way. That's 1 hour and 38 seconds. So they had queries that were only 1 second long that we were testing, and ones that were an hour and 38 seconds. We migrated the data to PDW. At this point that I'm showing you this graph, there are 0 indexes on the PDW. The green bars is the initial data load performance and our query performance for those queries. PDW was able to take an hour and 38-minute query and turn it into a 32-minute query. Now, where did it end up? We ended up to about 12 minutes when we ended up at the very final solution. And I think we actually got one of the queries down, I think the hour and 31, we got down into about a 12-second query after tuning was done. So if you need really fast results, really fast queries, PDW is a really great solution for that. So if there's any questions, please feel free to ask for now, or you can contact myself or John. And I want to say thank you for attending. If there's any questions, please go ahead.
Hello, and this is John. I wanted to go ahead and address a couple of questions that we had received during the course of the presentation today. First and foremost, we had several people request the deck, and I do want to let everyone know that we will have the deck and a video of the recording, or a link to the video of the recording distributed shortly. So you should all be receiving that by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. If you have questions, please use the Q&A function on the top of the live meeting window, and I will field those and read them off to Andy to have them answered. If you would rather speak with Andy or someone on our BI team and directly, you can also contact us at info@scalabilityexperts.com or by calling us directly at 469-635-6200, and we can set up a short free consultation for you. So I will hang on just a minute and see if any questions come in. Okay, we do have a question from Andrew. How does SQL Server now compare from a total cost of ownership perspective to Oracle with the release of 2012? Andy?
That's a good one. The licensing has definitely changed, and the total cost of ownership has definitely changed. But I think you'll still find that overall, if you compare apples to apples and functionality to functionality, SQL Server total cost of ownership is still far less than what Oracle's ownership is. If you want exact numbers, we can have that as an offline conversation.
Yeah, and I would like to add, I have seen some charts that discuss the cost, and we do have some evidence we can supply upon request. Do we have any other questions? Okay, we'll just give it another minute, and then if we don't, we will go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, we don't have any more questions coming in, so we're going to go ahead and wrap that up. If you have any questions, again, please contact us at info@scalabilityexperts.com, and we hope to see you guys again, either at a conference, by phone, or at another one of our upcoming webinars. Thanks so much.